everyone to a new video lesson on human physiology. Today we are going to discuss about the excretory system. Okay, this video is been made on the revised syllabus for the ISC class 11. So these are the topics that will be discussed in this video. The first one is excretion. Then comes the different types of excretion: ammonotelism, ureotelism, uricotelism. Human excretory system. LS of kidney means the longitudinal section of kidney showing the different parts of the kidneys. Structure of nephron, urine formation, the ultrafiltration, selective reabsorption, tubular secretion, the three steps of urine formation. Then comes countercurrent system, regulation of urine formation, renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system, or we also know it as RAS system. Then comes definitions of micturition, homeostasis, and some others. Role of ANF, erythropoietin. Some disorders are there: uremia, renal failure, renal caliculi, nephritis, and last comes hemodialysis and artificial kidney. So let's start. Excretion. So you can see the first thing, the first one is the definition. Simply, excretion is the removal of metabolic waste, the nitrogenous waste from the body. So the different types of metabolic wastes are ammonia, urea and uric acids. These metabolic wastes are produced from breakdown of protein. So generally the protein, it contains the nitrogenous substances. So as they broken down to the simpler one, they've been utilized in our body and they do produce some waste materials. They are ammonia, urea and uric acid. So there are several organisms. The organisms who secrete ammonia, urea and uric acid as their key nitrogenous wastes are called ammonotelic, ureotelic and uricotelic organism respectively. So let's get into this particular diagram. Here you can see this is a fish, this is a zebra and this is a bird. So what happened? Look, the specialization in the excretory product formation becomes more critical as the habitat changes. Ammonia, which is extremely toxic, need to be excreted from the body with more amount of water, but urea and uric acid, they are comparatively less toxic. Toxic means they are less poisonous and need less water, as you can understand that with their changes in habitat, they lost the luxury to lose extra water through excretion. So what the point is, look, ammonia, it's being generally found in the organisms who live in the aquatic environment. So they have a huge amount of water, so they have no need to reserve or just conserve water inside their body. So that product, that excreted product that generates in the aquatic animals and especially the bony fishes, they are the ammonia and they need to be taken out from the body instantaneously. Okay, then comes urea. Look, urea, it's a mammals, most amphibious cartilaginous fishes. So look, the mammals, this zebra, they came to a environment which is terrestrial one, or you can say the land one. So when it's come to the case of the land animals, they won't have much more water, you know? So what they do, they need to conserve the water inside their body. So as a result, their excretory system, it also develops. Okay, and the far end comes uric acid, which has much less amount of water, because you can see these are the aerial organism and also insects and reptiles. So they are, the water is not that much available to these organisms. So what they want to keep almost all the amount of water inside their body, and they releases the remaining in almost in the solid form. Okay, so let's get to the differentiation. Look, there is a comparison between different modes of excretion: ammonotelism, ureotelism and uricotelism. So let me tell you what, that ammonotelism occurs in the aquatic animals. So I think you can easily understand the organisms, those who release ammonia as their key nitrogenous waste, are called as ammonotelic organism, and that process is known as ammonotelism. Same in the case of ureotelism and uricotelism. So what are the product that being excreted? Ammonia is excreted, Urea is a major excretory product in ureotelism. Uricotelism, look, urico and ureo, there comes a bit of confusion. So as urico is there, C is there, means their excretory product is uric acid. Okay. Ammonia is very toxic. Ureotelism or the ureotelic animals, that urea, it's less toxic than ammonia. And uricotelism, it is the least toxic. Let me tell you one more thing. The ammonia, this ammonia, it is much more dissolved in water, means its solubility in water is much more. Okay, so what happen if this particular excretory product, it won't get released from the body, so it can cause much more toxicity, or much more, it can bring much more harmful effect to the body, so it needs to be taken out. Then comes ureotelism, less toxic, like us in human. Okay, through our urine we releases urea generally. So look, the urine, it gets stored in our bladder, no, inside our bladder. So we can keep the urea for some time inside our body. So from that we can learn that the solubility of urea is less than ammonia, and uricotelism, it is far more less, means it is not soluble in water, almost not non-soluble in water. Okay, so look what the next point says. A lot of water is required for elimination of ammonia. Comparatively less water is required for elimination of urea. Little water is required for elimination of uric acid. Look, I can tell you one thing. Ureotelism, urine is just in the case of us, that ammonia, how this ammoniotelic excretory material looks like, I think you might have seen that excretory materials of the fishes, so that's it. And the uricotelism, you just in your home you can see the wall lizards and their excreta, no, very black like thing, and at the top of that there is a white like dots, so that particular thing is your uric acid. Okay, so these are three types of excretory systems that remains in the animal world and the differentiations. Okay, now comes human excretory system, very important thing, we need to learn about our own excretory system. So look, these are the two kidney. Okay, the renal artery, it comes, and there is a renal vein. These are the ureter, this is the urinary bladder, and this is the urethra. Let me tell you one thing, the left kidney remains a bit higher than the right one. Okay, it's situated inside our body. The dorsal aorta, the renal arteries carry a large portion of total blood flow to the kidney. Okay, inferior vena cava, or the big vein that remains in the below side of our body, I mean beneath our heart, it carries deoxygenated blood from the kidney to the right atrium of the heart. Okay, so this renal artery you can also tell is as dorsal aorta. Then comes kidney, contain about 1.8 million nephron that works to excrete nitrogenous and other metabolic waste in the form of urine from the blood. Ureter, what the ureter does, it carry out the urine from the kidney to the urinary bladder by peristaltic movement. Okay. Then comes urinary ureter, the urinary bladder. Bladder means this is a urinary bladder. It is a storage sac for urine, collects urine carried from the kidney by ureter. So from inside this kidney, the urine is being formed and is being carried through the ureter to this urinary bladder. Okay, urethra, it is a small membranous tube that carries urine from the urinary bladder to the exterior at intervals. So why intervals? This thing I have just mentioned here, intervals. There are some urethral sphincter muscle located at the base of the urethra. Let me just mark it in the diagram. This particular location, there are two muscles. Okay, these are sphincter muscles. So these sphincter muscles, they control the outflow of our urine, and this particular release of urine is directly connected to our nervous system. Okay, so we'll learn about that later. So what are the parts of the excretory system. The main thing is our kidney, then renal artery, or you can say the dorsal aorta, and there is the renal artery, renal vein. Actually, renal artery is the part of the aorta that brings the blood. Okay, so you can see the inside that inward direction is there. That means the aorta, it brings the blood inside, and the inferior vena cava that takes out the blood outside, means to the body. Okay, renal vein, it is the part of the inferior vena cava that connects to the kidney, and renal artery, it is a part of the aorta, dorsal aorta, that goes inside the kidney. The ureter, it actually works as a carrier which carry the urine from the kidney to the urinary bladder by some movement. Okay, it is the peristaltic movement. Then urinary bladder, sac-like portion which keeps the urine inside, and urethra, it is a it is a organ, you can say, which just helps to release the urine outside. Okay, let's get to the LS of kidney. If we just make a section of the kidney longitudinally, so that's how it will look. It's just bean shaped. Okay, in the outer area, outer side, there is a renal capsule, means a capsulated structure that just protect our kidney. The outer half of the kidney is known as cortex, the inner half is the medulla, this particular portion. These are medullary pyramids, pyramid like structures are there. Calyx, renal column, renal artery, you can see the red one, and the blue one, the renal vein. Renal pelvis, very important portion, and ureter. So I just mentioned almost everything. Let's go through it. The kidney is covered by a fibrous renal capsule. Okay, what? By fibrous renal capsule. The outermost convex region, very important thing. The convex region of the kidney is called renal cortex. So the cortex is the, what is the cortex? This cortex is the convex one. Okay, and the inner concave region is the renal medulla. The medulla is divided into various cone-shaped structure called as renal pyramids. You can see here this medullary pyramids or renal pyramids. The renal pyramids extend from the cortex to the renal papilla. This is the cortex area, this is the inner side. This papilla extend into a space called renal pelvis. Okay, these are renal pelvis, this whole portion. So they just comes from the cortex inside the papilla. This is the papillary regions. Okay, the renal pyramids, the each papilla is fitted into a small tube-like structure known as minor calyx. Okay, it's not mentioned in here, but you can see this calyx, the small structure inside here. Okay, several minor calyx join to form two or three major calyx. The renal cortex contains Malpighian corpuscles, proximal and distal convoluted tubules of the nephrons. This cortex region. The medulla region contains Henle's loop of nephrons and collecting duct. Look, you can see the this straighted design, no, here in the pyramids. So these are nothing but the loop of Henle or Henle's loop and the collecting duct. Sorry, it has been just slipped out. So this renal medulla actually, there remains the Henle's loop and the collecting duct. Okay, in the cortex region, there remains the Malpighian corpuscles, proximal and distal convoluted tubules. Ureter and renal vein comes out of the kidney and renal artery enters through hilum. So actually, this renal artery and renal vein, it's also encapsulated into a structure which is called as hilum. Okay. Now next, let's get into the nephron. So what is the nephron? Look, I've just taken one representative diagram. The nephron is the structural and functional unit of kidney. Though, like the cell, it is a structural and functional unit of our body. Like that, nephron, it is the structural and functional unit of kidney, a particular organ inside our body. It consists of two parts, namely Malpighian corpuscles and renal tubules. So this is the Malpighian corpuscles. The Malpighian corpuscles is formed of two components, Bowman's capsule and glomerulus. I think you can see it. This is a cup-like structure, blue colored one. This is a Bowman's capsule, and this inside this reticulated blood capillaries, they are called as glomerulus. Okay. The renal tubule is formed of three components: proximal columnar tubule, the tubule that is near to this Malpighian corpuscles. Okay. This is a loop of Henle, and these are distal convoluted tubule, and these are the collecting ducts. Okay, so look, what I want to show you here is this is the afferent arteriole, a f f e r e n t, and this is the efferent arteriole. So the just the thing is that afferent arteriole, it brings the blood into the nephron, and efferent arteriole, it takes out the blood from the nephron. Okay, so sometimes confusion do appears, so always remember, if you go through alphabetically, a comes first, e comes later. No, so very easily, a for afferent arteriole, it brings the blood in, and efferent arteriole, it takes out the blood. Okay, and look, the efferent arteriole, it made a structure which surrounds the whole kidney. You can see here, these are vasa recta. Okay, which forms a network like structure around the nephron. The function of it we will discuss later on. Okay, so this is the nephron. Now here is another chart. Nephron, it have two portion. I have already said you that Malpighian corpuscles, renal tubules. The Malpighian corpuscles is divided into two portion: Bowman's capsule, glomerulus. The renal tubule have three portion: proximal columnar tubule, or we can also say it as PCT. Okay, PCT, and distal convoluted tubule, DCT, and Henle's loop. The Henle's loop have three portions: descending limb, hairpin band, and ascending limb. The descending limb, it have thick descending segment and thin descending segment. Ascending limb, it also have thin ascending segment and thick ascending segment. What are these? Let's go. Look, this is the proximal convoluted tubule. Okay, and from here start the what? That descending limb and the ascending limb of Henle's loop. So this whole structure up to this portion is our Henle's loop, or loop of Henle. Let me just mark it. So this one, this particular one, this is a descending limb. This one also, look, we have has been mentioned, descending limb. This is the hairpin like structure, this portion, and this is the thick ascending limb or thin ascending limb. So look here, it is quite thick in the prior portion, in the early portion. Let me take another color, and in this later half, it is quite thick. Okay, at first it is thick, then it start thinning, because this loop of Henle, it's thin because it's need the pressure. Okay, the hydrostatic pressure should be there, otherwise this urine will not go through the pin to a upward direction. Okay, that's why the diameter of this hairpin loop is quite thinner than the ascending and descending limb. Okay, so this is it. This is the portion of the nephron, you need to remember it. Okay, urine formation. What is urine? Very important point in this chapter, and it's being also learned in your class 10, I think. So let's go through it. Urine is an yellow colored aqueous fluid produced by kidney containing urea and unwanted organic and inorganic substances. So we almost all of us know that it's quite light yellow color, no, urine. But why that yellow color? Now you are in class 11, so you need to learn that why is it in, why that yellow color comes. So the yellow colors is in the urine is due to the presence of a pigment called urochrome. Okay, what? Urochrome, which comes from the old red blood cells. The breakdown of heme part of the hemoglobin produces bilirubin. Okay, so hemoglobin is the portion inside our RBC that helps to carry the oxygen and the carbon dioxide. So when the RBCs, they broken down, the old RBCs, so it produces bilirubin, or you can say that bile pigment. Okay, and the bilirubin, it in further case it breaks down to urobilin or urochrome. This urochrome, and this particular urochrome brings that yellow color. Okay, formation of urine is highly sensitive and complex process. Consists of three key steps: glomerular filtration, or we can call it as ultrafiltration. Okay, selective reabsorption of water and substance back to blood, and tubular secretion. That's the three things. Okay, glomerular filtration, selective reabsorption, and tubular secretion. Okay, so let's go. Look, this is a representative image of that whole process. Look, this is the afferent arteriole that brings the blood in. This is the efferent arteriole that brings the blood out. This is the Bowman's capsule, and these are the glomerulars. So from the glomerulars, the blood is being filtered, and everything remaining, that blood plasma and that the plasma proteins and RBC, what it carries, it's being taken out inside this cavity, or you can see that Bowman's cavity in this portion. Okay, and they are called as glomerular filtrate as they comes out from the glomerulars. Okay, I can write GF, glomerular filtrate. Then happens reabsorptions, means everything has been taken inside these Bowman's capsules. Then some of those things may be essential for our body, no, so they need to be taken back to the body. Okay, that's why in that first diagram I have mentioned that the vasa recta, that network of capillaries, it surrounds the nephrons. So blood capillaries are there. So these essential things like the ions, like most of the water, is being taken inside the blood again through reabsorption. And secretions, look, that inner inside this afferent arteriole is quite thicker, but the efferent arteriole is quite thinner. Why is it? Because this design is for increasing the pressure. Okay, the inward vessel, it is bringing much more amount of blood, but the outward arteriole, it takes out less amount of blood. So what that means? It means that the blood that is inside, it is enjoying much more pressure, and that pressure causes the filtration. Understood? And look how nicely these glomerulus have just spread it inside. No, this because it increases the surface area between the contact of this Bowman's capsule and this blood. You can see that the network of blood capillaries, blood vessels actually. So it increases the surface area. Okay, let me mark here. Increases, sorry, surface area. Okay, and secretion, as is being very thin, so sometimes not everything, every unnecessary products in the blood, they gets out from the body. Sometimes they need secretion, means the blood vessels, those vasorectors, they do send some unwanted, some unnecessary things back to the nephrons. Okay, so the three portion: filtration, reabsorption, and secretion. I hope this diagram will help you. Okay, so let's go to the much more detail of the ultrafiltration. So ultrafiltration or glomerular filtration, look at the same diagram almost. So this is the glomerular capsule, this is the afferent arteriole, this is the efferent arteriole, and this is the proximal tubule. So what I have done, I have just mentioned some of the points, okay, of this ultrafiltration. Let's go through it. Bowman's capsule acts as ultrafilters. Okay. As blood flows through glomerular capillaries, water and all the substance dissolved in plasma except blood cell and certain plasma protein. Look, I have already told you. The blood cells and some plasma protein, they are not releasing the blood. They remains in the blood, except them everything goes out. Filter into the cavity of Bowman's capsule. So this is a Bowman's capsule's cavity. The filtration is called ultrafiltration, the process, and the filtrate fluid is called glomerular filtrate. Okay, what? Glomerular filtrate, which contains water, urea, uric acid, creatinine, amino acids, glucose, sodium, potassium ions, sodium ions, and vitamins, etc. Okay, so that is the whole thing how this ultrafiltration happens. Now the point is that why this Bauman's capsule is called ultrafilters. What is the specialty inside it? So here I have mentioned some 3-4 points. Let's go through it. The thin epithelial membrane of Bauman's capsule carries podocyte cells that have minor processes, and the space between the cells facilitates a fine structure of filter. What? Look, this is the Bauman's capsule, no? Inside, in this location, there remains some cells, special cells, which are called as podocyte cells, which works as a filtration mechanism. And let me show you this particular image. Look, here you can see these are the blood capillaries, and this was the wall of the Bowman's capsule, and this is a Bowman's capsule cavity. So these are the podocyte cells. Look, this is a food process of podocytes. These are the podocyte cells, and in between them you can see, look here, here also these all are the pores or that space left between the cells. This whole structure, these podocyte cells and these food processes, this space between the cells, they generates a structure of a filter. Okay. Then what happened? Endothelium of glomerular capillaries. These glomerular capillaries, they have an endothelial cell membrane. Thin basement membrane between the endothelium and glomerular capillaries and epithelium of Bowman's capsule. So the epithelium, the Bowman's capsule, it have epithelial cell layer, and the glomerular apparatus, this blood capillaries, they have endothelium cell layer. So in between them, there remains basement membrane. Okay, and the development of filtration pressure. This is the key important thing, that development of filtration pressure. So what is that? I have already told you that this afferent arteriole, it's quite bigger and thicker in size, it brings much more blood, and the efferent arteriole, it's quite thinner in size. Okay, so they produces a pressure inside. The capillary pressure is 75 millimeter of Hg. Okay, the capsular hydrostatic pressure is 20 millimeter of that Hg. Blood colloidal osmotic pressure. So the total pressure inside these capillaries is 75 millimeter. The capsular hydrostatic pressure in between the capsules, they are 20 millimeter, and the blood colloidal osmotic pressure, blood is a colloids, so they do have a osmotic pressure, and that is 30 millimeter. So if you deduct these two from the capillary pressure, that will show you the net filtration pressure. So the net filtration pressure is 25 millimeter of Hg. Okay, it's not that much important, but still you need to know about it, because in future it will definitely come to your study. So the net filtration pressure is 25 millimeter of Hg. That causes the formation of the early urine. Okay, so this is a very easy diagram. Look, this is the blood vessel, this is the Malpighian corpuscles. So that's how the blood, these are the blood, you can see the most of the blood is leaving, and it's being filtered. Look, some things are going inside the nephron. Okay, now selective reabsorption. So what I have told, that reabsorption is necessary, because by that glomerular filtrate there come so many essential things, ions and also waters, that are very essential of our body. You know what is the amount of our blood? 5 liter. And what is the amount of urine that we excrete per day? Generally 1.5 liter. No. So if all the water that we take, it goes out from our body, then our body will be dehydrated. So that's not the case. Our urine is there for our help. They reabsorbs almost all the water inside our body, and they releases the unwanted things in a much more concentrated manner, isn't it? So this selective reabsorption is very important thing. It just reabsorbs almost everything, almost all the water that's being filtered out. Okay, so the reabsorption of only useful substance from the filtrate into the blood capillaries is called tubular reabsorption or selective reabsorption. Okay, only the useful substance, this is the keyword. Okay, let me just mark it for you, only useful substances. It is achieved by diffusion, facilitated diffusion, active transport, cold transport, osmosis. These are the process through which this selective reabsorption is done. Reabsorption in PCT, proximal coronary tubule. What are the reabsorption happens? Glucose. Look, the glucose. I'm just telling you that these are the things that's been taken inside by ultrafiltration. Now it is the time to giving back. Look, this is a tubule. These are the glomerular filtrate. Now something is going back. Something is going back to the bloodstream. Okay, so what are they? So from the PCT, the glucose, the amino acid, the sodium, potassium, chlorine, water, and some urea also. Look, urea also, it's reabsorbed in the blood. Reabsorption in descending loop of Henle, water. Reabsorption in ascending loop of Henle, the sodium, potassium, chlorine, urea. Look, no water is being reabsorbed in the ascending loop of Henle's loop. Reabsorption in DCT, water, sodium chloride, bicarbonates and potassium. Reabsorption in collecting duct, sodium chloride and water. Actually, I should write it as sodium and chlorine ions, but I think you will understand it. So let's come to this particular diagram. What it says, look, this is a fluid in tubule lumen. Means it is the tubular space inside the tube where that glomerular filtrate are there. These are the tubule cells and there are some gap between them. Paracellular reabsorptions, or means when the solutes, these are the solutes, no? Glucose, amino acid, sodium, solutes. And solvent is also there, water is also there. So when they goes through this space between the tubule cell, the process is called as paracellular reabsorption. And when that reabsorption taken through the cells, look, it's being so beautifully shown here, through the cells, it is called as transcellular reabsorption. Means you are going through. Paracellular, they are going through the gap of the cells. Okay, that's all. So selective reabsorption, you need to know the definition and the different parts of the urinary tract system, from where what are the products that's being reabsorbed. Okay, so these are the key points you need to know. Reabsorption in PCT, reabsorption in descending loop of limb of Henle's loop, ascending limb, reabsorption in DCT, and reabsorption in collecting ducts. Okay. So the third part comes here, tubular secretion. Look, this was a reabsorption. The blood is taking. Now it is again that time of blood, and it's just giving it back to the nephron again. Its turn. The tubular secretion involves the movement of toxic substances. So here is a keyword, toxic substances. Means the poisonous substances from the blood capillaries, interstitial fluid and epithelial cells of nephron into glomerular filtrate. Potassium ion are secreted into the filtrate in DCT and collecting duct. So from the DCT and collecting duct, the potassium ion is being secreted inside. The hydrogen, this ammonium and the bicarbonates from bloods are secreted into the filtrate in DCT. Urea enters the filtrate in thin ascending loop of Henle's loop. Creatinine, hippuric acid, para-aminohippuric acid, drugs, pigments are secreted into the filtrate in DCT from the interstitial fluid. Look, here's the one thing, pigments and the drugs that are not naturally we consume, no, we consume them through foods or from medications. So these things, they are as they have much more bigger size, molecular size, you can call them as macromolecule, so they won't be able to cross the glomerulus. Okay, please do listen this carefully. As drugs and pigments, these have a bigger molecular structure, they are not able to cross the glomerulus, okay, to the Bauman's capsule. So what they do, they get to the, they also need to be taken out from our body, no? So that's why they being secreted from the vasa recta, from the capillaries inside the nephron through the process of secretion. Okay, so these three steps are very important. The first one is ultrafiltration or glomerular filtration, then comes our selective reabsorption, and third one comes tubular secretion. Okay, so here is a small overview that I have just made. A mechanism of urine formation: the blood, it goes through the glomerulus, through the Bowman's capsule, and by the process of ultrafiltration it produces glomerular filtrate. Then the glomerular filtrate goes through the renal tubule, and there happens reabsorptions. These are the arrows. After reabsorption takes place secretion. So look, reabsorptions: NaCl, amino acids, glucose, bicarbonates, waters. So what happened? So from the renal tubule they go to the blood. Okay, the reabsorption. And the secretion: from the blood it goes to the renal tubule. You have already learned before. So urea, phosphate, creatinine, hippuric acid, drugs, potassium, uh, hydrogen ions, and also that pigments, no? So they are being taken inside the blood, inside the renal tubule, through the blood, because whatever comes in the renal tubule, that forms our urine. Okay, and then this urine go to the collecting duct. From the collecting duct it goes to duct of Bellini, bigger duct, then to the pyramid, minor calyx, major calyx, pelvis, ureter, urinary bladder, and urethra. So this is, in short, a gist, and is being it is a fate of urine, how it's being produced and how it's being delivered. Okay, so this is the mechanism of urine formation. You can also note it down if you would like to. Then the function of different parts of nephron: glomerulus, its main function is ultrafiltration, substance removed, water, all solutes except colloids, sodium, and probably some other ions, etc. Okay, proximal community tubule, its function is PCT actually, reabsorption by active transport, co-transport, or diffusion. So what it reabsorbs from the glomerular filtrate: potassium, chlorine, calcium, magnesium, bicarbonates, and probably some other ions, glucose, fructose, amino acids, also about 50% of the urea. The loop of Henle: reabsorption by diffusion, reabsorption by active transport. So I'm just not going to copy reading it. Okay, you just do go through it. The main thing is that if through this chart you can learn, you can also understand that which part, how it works, what is the process of reabsorptions, whether it is diffusion, whether it is active transport, whether it is alter, whether it is anything co-transport. Okay, so these are the parts and these are the things that being removed. Okay, so that's it for today. They are the counter current systems. If I go through it, it will take a longer time and it will make the video bigger. So in the next part we'll learn about the remaining of the excretory system. Okay, thank you.